The NFL just pulled the trigger on one of the most explosive bans in league history. Kevin Stefanski is gone, banned for life, after a leaked audio recording exposed a full-blown conspiracy inside the Cleveland Browns. This isn't a suspension. This isn't a fine. This is Roger Goodell dropping the nuclear option, and it's all because of what was said behind closed doors about Shedeur Sanders.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The tape, now infamously known as the Sanders suppression audio, caught Stefanski and key members of his coaching staff laying out a strategy to keep Sanders benched. Not based on performance, not based on readiness, but because they wanted to protect the locker room hierarchy, favor veteran players, and, most damning of all, control the narrative of the team. This wasn't just a questionable coaching decision. This was an orchestrated effort to freeze out a rising quarterback in favor of protecting internal power structures. On tape, with receipts. And when the NFL got its hands on that audio, the reaction was immediate and unforgiving. Roger Goodell invoked a rarely used commissioner power clause to hand down a lifetime ban for conduct detrimental to the integrity of the league. The last time the NFL saw this level of punishment, Pete Rose was still arguing with baseball. Stefanski is now permanently blacklisted. No coaching, no consulting, no sideline privileges. And the Browns? Thrown into absolute chaos. The fallout was instant. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz was shoved into the interim head coach role like someone being handed a grenade with the pin already pulled. The front office went into PR lockdown. Fans were melting down on social media. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders? Named starting QB the same day. What the audio revealed wasn't just bad optics, it was systematic sabotage. Practice reps manipulated. Playbooks doctored. A young quarterback's development deliberately stunted to serve politics over performance. It wasn't just shady, it was surgical. And the worst part? It didn't even sound like they were hiding it. The leaked conversation played like a smug strategy meeting, with coaches openly discussing how to slow-walk Sanders' growth and justify it to the press. Within 24 hours of the leak, Goodell had already launched an internal investigation, and within 72, Stefanski's fate was sealed. Lifetime ban. No appeals. No second chances. The league's message couldn't be louder. Coaching manipulation is now a capital offense. Legal experts are already circling. Stefanski's camp is threatening lawsuits. The Browns' ownership is lawyering up. The NFLPA is reportedly exploring new clauses for player protections. And fans? Half are praising the league's decisive action. The other half are wondering, how many other teams are pulling this off the record? This isn't just a coaching scandal, it's an organizational earthquake. And the aftershocks? Just getting started. The NFL has just witnessed one of the most jaw-dropping moments in league history. A full-blown scandal detonated inside the Cleveland Browns organization, and its fallout has left a crater in the middle of professional football. The head coach of the Browns, Kevin Stefanski, has been banned for life. Not suspended. Not fined. Not reprimanded. But indefinitely. Forever. And it wasn't over some on-field incident or off-season drama. No, this was the result of a secret audio recording that exposed a conspiracy so calculated, so manipulative, that it's already being compared to the biggest betrayals in sports history. At the center of it all? A young quarterback named Shedeur Sanders, a coaching staff determined to hold him back, and a league commissioner who decided this was the hill to die on. It all began behind closed doors, literally. In a leaked audio recording from what appears to be a Browns staff meeting, Stefanski and his team were caught red-handed plotting to suppress Sanders' development. We're not talking about vague coaching disagreements or differences in opinion. No, the audio revealed explicit, intentional strategies to keep Sanders benched. Manipulated practice reps, controlled game plans, schemed roster management. All of it, allegedly orchestrated to protect veteran players and maintain control over the locker room hierarchy. The voice on that audio left little room for doubt. Stefanski and his staff weren't trying to develop Sanders. They were actively hindering him. Not because he wasn't ready, but because he threatened the power structure they'd built around aging vets and a tightly controlled system. That revelation alone would be enough to start a firestorm, but this was gasoline on a bonfire. Within hours of the audio hitting the internet, outrage exploded. Fans were furious. Media analysts were stunned. Legal experts began circling the situation like vultures, and even neutral observers were asking, how deep does this go? Was this just Stefanski, or part of something bigger? And how many players in the NFL have been sidelined by politics we never hear about? But what made this different, what turned this from a scandal into a reckoning, was the NFL's response. Roger Goodell didn't wait for lawyers. He didn't let it simmer for a few news cycles. He came out swinging. In a rare, almost unheard-of move, Goodell banned Kevin Stefanski for life. Lifetime bans in the NFL are extremely rare, usually reserved for the most egregious conduct. Think gambling violations, criminal behavior, or league-defining scandals. This one? It was about integrity. Or as Goodell put it, conduct detrimental to the league. The moment the announcement hit, it sent shockwaves through the entire NFL. Players, coaches, team execs, everyone realized the precedent had changed. Suppressing a player's career? That was now a line you don't cross. In the days that followed, chaos erupted in Cleveland. The Browns, already reeling, were forced to act fast. Ownership moved quickly, appointing Jim Schwartz as interim head coach. And whether it was damage control or a genuine reset, the move was seen as an attempt to stabilize the franchise and show the league they were taking things seriously. Stefanski was out. So were several key members of his staff. And just like that, the Browns' entire power structure began to collapse. But while the organization scrambled to save face, all eyes were on Shedeur Sanders. And here's where it gets even more intense. After all that turmoil, after months of being sidelined and strategically benched, Sanders was finally named the starting quarterback. His response? Not a victory lap. No shade. No petty tweets. Just a calm, measured statement thanking supporters and promising to focus on football. That level of maturity, especially given the circus around him, only boosted his reputation. Fans rallied behind him. Teammates began speaking out in support. And the once divided locker room started shifting toward unity. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. Some fans thought the lifetime ban was overkill. Others questioned whether the leak violated due process. Legal analysts began debating whether Goodell had the authority to issue a punishment so severe. Stefanski's legal team, unsurprisingly, is gearing up for a fight. Lawsuits are expected, from Stefanski himself, possibly from the Browns, and maybe even from Sanders' camp if further misconduct is uncovered. We're talking about wrongful termination claims, breach of contract, and even potential labor violations. But Goodell? He's not backing down. Sources close to the league say the commissioner viewed this case as a test. If the NFL wants to be taken seriously on integrity, if it wants to show players they're protected from internal corruption, this was the moment to prove it. That's why the response was so swift, so severe, and so public. And now, it's setting off a domino effect across the league. The NFL Players Association is reportedly reviewing protections for young players, especially rookies and backups. Discussions are underway about adding language to contracts that would prevent manipulative benching or retaliatory coaching decisions. Front offices are bracing for increased scrutiny on how reps and depth charts are handled. And coaching staffs? They've been put on notice. Player suppression is not just unethical, it could end your career. Meanwhile, Browns ownership is trying desperately to steer the narrative. Jimmy Haslam, the team's owner, has promised a full internal review and pledged to cooperate with league investigators. But the damage is already done. The Browns' image has taken a major hit, and it's unclear how long it'll take to rebuild trust. Draft decisions are being questioned. Player morale is fragile. And no matter what happens next, this season will forever have an asterisk next to it. But this scandal isn't just about one coach or one team. It's become a cultural moment. On social media, fans are drawing parallels to other sports scandals, cases where promising athletes were derailed by politics, favoritism, or sabotage. Many are calling for a deeper investigation into other teams, worried this isn't an isolated case. The NFL is facing a reckoning on transparency and ethical leadership. And for once, fans aren't content with a PR statement and a press conference. The discourse has gone beyond sports. Legal scholars are weighing in on the limits of commissioner power. Ethicists are discussing organizational responsibility. And for the first time in a while, the league's core values, fairness, meritocracy, player development, are being questioned in a meaningful way. Even the NFLPA, which often finds itself clashing with the league office, is rumored to be in alignment with Goodell's decision. But because no matter how heavy-handed it seemed, the message was clear: this kind of manipulation won't be tolerated. That message is now reverberating throughout locker rooms and front offices. And the Browns? They're left trying to clean up a mess that might take years to undo. Because let's be honest, the damage isn't just reputational. It's systemic. This scandal peeled back the curtain on how power is wielded behind the scenes. How careers can be steered, stalled, or destroyed based on internal agendas. It showed just how vulnerable young players are when their future is in the hands of coaches more focused on maintaining control than building talent. And worst of all, it proved that without accountability, that corruption can fester. That's what makes this story so powerful and so unsettling. Kevin Stefanski may be the only one banned for life, but the ripple effect is far from over. Investigations are ongoing. Legal battles are looming. And the entire NFL is watching how this plays out. One thing's certain, the Browns' season isn't just about wins or losses anymore. It's a test of whether a franchise can recover from a total moral collapse. And while Shedeur Sanders is finally getting his shot, the question now becomes, how many other players didn't? How many careers were benched before they began? How many coaches are sweating right now, hoping no one checks their team meetings? The league has cracked open the door on internal dysfunction. Whether it swings wide or gets slammed shut again, that depends on what happens next. So let this be a cautionary tale to every coach in the league. If you're playing politics with a player's career, be prepared to pay the price. Because the NFL just made it very clear, your clipboard isn't a shield, and your headset isn't a crown. And if you think the story's done, you might want to buckle up. Because lawsuits are coming, league policies are shifting, and the entire culture of NFL coaching could be on the verge of change. If you've got thoughts on this madness, drop them in the comments. Was the lifetime ban too harsh, or long overdue? And if you're into messy scandals and football meltdowns like this, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started. Alright, so let's talk about fallout, because the Browns aren't just trying to move past this like it's a bad press week. They're in full-blown crisis mode. Kevin Stefanski wasn't just a head coach. He was the culture of that team. He had the owner's trust, ran the locker room, and made the big calls on game days and behind the scenes. And now he's gone. Not fired with a pat on the back or sent off with a vague, "We thank him for his contributions" statement. Then erased from the league. The NFL didn't just close the door on Stefanski. They slammed it, locked it, and torched the house on the way out. And that sets a dangerous precedent for both sides. Because while the league is painting this as a clean cut of accountability, the legal situation brewing underneath is anything but clean. Stefanski's legal team is preparing to argue wrongful termination, breach of contract, and possibly defamation. They're claiming the ban was reactive, too fast, and lacking due process. And look, love him or hate him, Stefanski had years left on his contract. That means money. A lot of it. We're talking millions in guaranteed salary, bonuses, and contractual protections. If the Browns or the NFL didn't follow every legal step to the letter, that's a courtroom brawl waiting to happen. And that's before we get into potential lawsuits from Sanders' camp. Because now that we know there was a deliberate effort to sabotage his development, you can bet his team is looking into whether this damaged his reputation, limited his earning potential, or violated labor laws. Was it workplace discrimination? Career sabotage? Was there a hostile environment created by the coaching staff? Questions like those aren't just buzzwords, they're legal landmines. And depending on what else gets uncovered, we might be looking at one of the most expensive coaching scandals in sports history. But legal chaos aside, the Browns have a football team to run. And let's be real, this isn't a simple next man up situation. Stefanski's staff wasn't just complicit, they were part of the plan. The audio clearly referenced other coaches in the room nodding along, strategizing with him. This wasn't one rogue voice. It was a team culture of suppression. So even with Stefanski gone, how many others are still in the building, quietly sweating, hoping their names don't come out? That's what makes Jim Schwartz's appointment as interim head coach so high stakes. He's not just inheriting a team, he's inheriting a mess. A locker room that's been lied to. A quarterback who's been sabotaged. A fan base that's divided. And an ownership group that's panicking. His first job isn't just winning games, it's rebuilding trust. Not exactly something you fix with a few inspirational speeches and a team dinner. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders is finally getting the spotlight he should have had from day one. But let's not act like this is some feel-good sports movie redemption arc. The guy was intentionally held back, had his reps manipulated, and was forced to sit on the bench while his team burned around him. And now, with the entire world watching, he's expected to perform? That's a massive amount of pressure. Not to mention, he's got to do it while still fielding media questions about the scandal that wasn't his fault in the first place. And yet, he's handling it. Calmly. Professionally. No drama, no ego, just focus. That's earned him massive respect across the league. Not just from fans, but from players and analysts who've seen young talent get chewed up by the system. Because here's the ugly truth. This probably isn't an isolated case. Sanders might just be the one we heard about. That's what's scaring other teams right now. The idea that this recording was only the tip of the iceberg. If one team was bold enough to say the quiet part out loud in a meeting room, what's happening in the rest of the league? Who's next? The NFL is acting like this was a one-off, an anomaly. But the whispers inside front offices are saying otherwise. Other quarterbacks, other rookies, other coaching staffs, everyone's now wondering if similar conversations have happened behind their closed doors. And more importantly, what happens if those doors get opened? That paranoia is starting to shift the league culture. Sources inside multiple organizations say internal meetings are already being restructured. Coaches are being warned to keep their opinions off record. Player development plans are suddenly getting audits. And somewhere out there, a whole bunch of assistant coaches are deleting messages like their careers depend on it. Because they do. But while the league tries to lock everything down, the public isn't letting go. Fans aren't moving on. Social media is keeping this story alive. Threads, TikToks, podcasts, it's all being dissected, theorized, analyzed. Stefanski's name is trending for all the wrong reasons, and Sanders? He's becoming the face of a larger conversation. What does real player protection look like? The NFLPA is reportedly already drafting new proposals. Language in contracts that would give players more recourse if they believe they're being benched unfairly. Independent review panels to assess rep distribution. Even anonymous reporting systems for players to flag internal suppression. 10 years ago, this would have sounded absurd. But it might become policy. Because this wasn't about bad play calling. It wasn't about locker room drama. It was about control. A coaching staff that feared a rising star so much, they chose to sabotage their own future rather than adapt to it. And that kind of fear? That's not just toxic, it's contagious. Now the Browns are stuck trying to rebuild from ground zero. They've lost credibility. Their draft strategy is being questioned. Their locker room leadership is fractured. And worst of all, every single move they make this season will be under a microscope. Every win will be dismissed as cleanup. Every loss will be seen as karma. And every decision will be haunted by the voice in that audio file. And here's what stings most for the organization. This could have been avoided. Stefanski could have embraced the future. Sanders could have been developed properly. The Browns could have been the team that got ahead of the curve instead of becoming a cautionary tale. But instead, they played scared. They chose politics over performance, and now the bill has come due. The irony? They had their franchise quarterback the whole time. He was just sitting there, waiting, watching, working. And now that the smoke has cleared, he's the one standing tall. It's almost poetic. But don't get it twisted, this isn't the end of the scandal. This is just intermission. Because legal teams are circling. Investigators are digging. And the NFL's statement might have closed one chapter, but it opened an entire book of questions. Who else knew? How long was this going on? Are there more tapes? And what happens if another one leaks? Because let's be honest, once one secret gets out, they usually don't come alone. So now we wait. We watch. And we keep the pressure on. Because what happened to Shedeur Sanders should never happen to any player in this league. And if Stefanski's ban sends even one message, it's this: the era of unchecked coaching power is over. The NFL is being forced into a new era, one where transparency matters. Where talent can't be buried for convenience. Where sabotage has consequences. And for fans, it's a wake-up call. Because for all the highlight reels, fantasy stats, and Sunday rituals, this sport is still run by people. People with agendas, egos, and, sometimes, zero accountability. Until now. Let's be real, this isn't just a Browns story anymore. This is the NFL story. A blueprint for how fast loyalty can turn into liability, and how one piece of leaked audio can flip an entire franchise on its head. And the fact that it all came down to control, not talent, not injury, not scheme, should have every single coaching staff shaking in their stadium-issued boots. Because if Stefanski, a Coach of the Year winner, can be erased like this, nobody's untouchable. You think other young quarterbacks aren't side-eyeing their head coaches right now? Watching practice rotations a little closer? Wondering if that one weird benching wasn't about development after all? The trust between players and coaches, already thin in some places, just got thinner. And for the Browns front office, there's no clean way out of this. They either knew what was happening and let it slide, or they were so out of touch that their coaching staff ran a full-blown conspiracy right under their noses. Pick your poison. Either way, it's a bad look, and fans aren't letting them off the hook. This whole situation has also exposed the deep rot in how some franchises operate. When keeping the locker room culture intact becomes more important than letting a talented player compete, that's not football. That's politics. And if the NFL wants to convince fans it's serious about meritocracy, about letting the best players rise, no matter their status, they can't just ban one guy and walk away. This is about more than Stefanski. This is about systems that protect power instead of performance. So yeah, the Browns might survive this season. They might even win some games. But the shadow of this scandal? It's not going anywhere. Not when every announcer, every sideline reporter, every pregame panel is going to bring it up every single week. How's the team responding post-Stefanski? Is Sanders finally getting the development he deserves? Can Jim Schwartz rebuild trust in that locker room? It's going to follow them. And for Sanders, this is his shot. He's no longer just playing for wins. He's playing to prove what was denied. Every throw, every scramble, every win is now a statement. You tried to bury me, and I'm still here. And if he lights it up this season? If he takes the Browns to the playoffs? Oh, the irony would be immaculate. So buckle up, because this isn't a comeback story. It's a reckoning. And the NFL just learned what happens when receipts hit the airwaves. If you're as hooked on this as we are, drop your take in the comments. Should more heads roll? Is this the start of a culture shift? And don't forget to subscribe, because if this is how the season starts, you know there's more chaos coming.